LoveLore Library. Chapter 167, Chu Jinling's bookstore manager Chi sighed. I know, but Miss has invested so much. Without money on hand, I still have some concerns. In her previous life, Su Yingxue hadn't been involved in business, but she understood that to succeed in any endeavor, an equivalent investment was necessary at the beginning. You had to put in as much as you expected to get out. Since she had committed to let Wu Jinyan do as she pleased, she had to keep up with her. As for expanding the clinic, she was contemplating whether to do it concurrently. She sat down with Manager Qi and did some calculations, realizing that simultaneous expansion did carry risks. If something went awry, they might not have enough funds to make timely corrections. Miss, the 9th prince has arrived. Just as Su Yingxue was pondering this, a god of fortune suddenly appeared. Chu Jinling brought a chest of gold and tossed it in front of Su Yingxue. I heard you were discussing expanding the clinic. Will this be enough? Su Yingxue was left utterly astonished. Manager Qi, looking at the chest of gold, was even more bewildered. Is this a reward from the 9th prince? Chu Jinling shook his head and smiled. My mother gave this to me. Consider it yours. After saying this, he threw the gold to Manager Qi, asking him to clear some space, as he wished to speak privately with Su Yingxue. Su Yingxue nodded, and Manager Qi collected the gold. She patted Chu Jinling on the shoulder, saying, Thank you so much. This is a reward from my mother, it's not related to me. If you want to express your gratitude, go thank my mother. She believes you're someone capable of achieving great things, and there will surely be times when you need money. Chu Jinling grinned and winked, his admiration for his mother's judgment evident. In the future, when I visit Consort Xiang in the palace, I'll also pay my respects to the imperial consort. But 9th prince, you didn't come here for no reason today, did you? Su Yingxue raised an eyebrow. Of course, I have a reason. Didn't we agree before that I'd share half of the earnings from publishing the book with you? I've just finished writing the new volume, and I've brought it for you to take a look. Chu Jinling, treating his manuscript as a cherished item, handed it to Su Yingxue. As Su Yingxue flipped through the pages, he nervously reminded her, handle it gently. It hasn't been sent for printing yet. Su Yingxue smirked and joined him in reading. Tisk, tisk, 9th prince, I must say, you don't seem suited to be a prince. Su Yingxue rested her head on her hand, giving Chu Jinling a thorough appraisal. How did such a talented writer end up in the royal family? Chu Jinling carefully stored away his manuscript, completely unfazed by Su Yingxue's sarcasm. He proudly declared, I've led a smooth life as a prince. I don't have grand ambitions. As long as I'm happy, that's enough. However, I've always treated people sincerely. If I say I'll give you half of my earnings, then I will. Come to my bookstore in a couple of days, and we'll share the spoils. After flaunting his manuscript, Chu Jinling took his leave. Su Yingxue saw him off and felt that something was amiss. She was collaborating with him on writing a book, so how did it turn into sharing the proceeds? Bah! Although the wording might not have been the best, 2 days later, Su Yingxue wrapped up her current tasks and went to his bookstore as agreed. She had assumed that Chu Jinling was a casual person, and his bookstore would be no different from those on the street. However, she was in for a surprise. Chu Jinling's bookstore was not only spacious but also housed many renowned authors. She entered through the main door. The room was filled with the fragrance of ink. The air was still filled with the freshness of bamboo leaves. The bookstore was divided into inner and outer halls. The outer hall had dozens of large bookshelves, neatly categorized with various types of books. The store had dedicated staff to prevent book theft and to explain and collect books. Chapter 168, Care for Her. As for the inner hall, it was indeed a paradise for scholars. A folding screen separated the reading rooms for men and women. Outside the windows on both sides, there were picturesque views, casting the figures of scholars in a setting that resembled an otherworldly paradise. Perhaps it was the ambience, but those who came here to read possessed remarkable qualities. They were neither noisy nor disruptive, quietly engrossed in their books, either copying or taking notes. The atmosphere wasn't as formal as that of an academy, but it exuded an even greater sense of elegance and charm. Su Yingxue was invited into the backyard. She was aware that behind Chu Jinling's bookstore, there was a place for relaxation. However, what she didn't anticipate was that this space was connected to a private residence. It boasted beautiful mountains, serene waters, and breathtaking scenery. There were artificial hills with meandering streams, and carp ponds beneath bridges, and upon passing through an archway, one would find themselves in an open-sided hall. If one listened carefully, the sweet calls of cuckoo birds could be heard around the hall. Their crisp and melodious sounds filled the air. Chu Jinling was seated, engrossed in a game of chess with someone. Upon seeing Su Yingxue, his eyes brightened. "Auntie! Auntie! Come over here. I'm being bullied to death by Imperial Uncle." The moment he spotted Su Yingxue, he pouted and complained about a child, pointing at Chu Yihan. "Imperial Uncle won't let me have a single move. He's been beating me so badly that I have nowhere left to place my pieces." Chu Yihan, clad in a long purple and gold robe, held a white chess piece in his hand. He responded sternly, "A loss is a loss. Why are you making it sound so dignified?" Chu Jinling pursed his lips and put on a pitiful expression in front of Su Yingxue. He appeared weak and wronged, evoking sympathy. How pitiable! Su Yingxue took a white chess piece from his chess box and placed it on the chessboard. Thump! "Your Highness, the ninth prince hasn't lost yet." Su Yingxue tilted her head, her expression filled with pride. Chu Yihan tossed the black chess piece into the chess box with a faint smile on his lips. "I concede." Chu Jinling remained unconvinced. He rolled up his sleeves and exclaimed, "Imperial Uncle! Don't be so biased. You can freely defeat me, but with Auntie, you just surrender directly. Your heart has twisted." Chu Yihan's expression remained indifferent as he gestured towards Su Yingxue. There. His heart had already taken a different direction. A hint of embarrassment flickered across Su Yingxue's face. Wasn't he being a little too direct? Chu Jinling quickly stood up. "Goodbye, Imperial Uncle." He left in a huff, refusing to stay and witness their affectionate interaction. Woof! This was simply too much of a tease. Su Yingxue and Chu Yihan hadn't seen each other in a few days. Now that she saw him, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of excitement. Chu Yihan had put considerable effort into their meeting today. He had arranged for Chu Jinling to visit the clinic to find her and then brought her to this remarkable place. With such splendid scenery, his striking countenance, and his kind treatment of her. "Come here." Chu Yihan extended his hand, bringing her over to sit beside him. His fingers lightly grazed her wrist, touching the most tender skin on her arm. Su Yingxue felt a faint electric sensation as his fingertips transmitted a gentle current from her wrist to her skin, causing her entire nervous system to quiver slightly. "Your Highness, I want to ask you something." Chu Yihan's sudden question snapped Su Yingxue out of her reverie. She gave her cheeks a light pat and cleared her mind of any romantic notions. With a gaze of pure innocence, she looked at him. "Please, go ahead. Do you happen to know of a poison called chaotic flower?" Su Yingxue's eyes dimmed slightly, and even her voice took on a more somber tone. "Why does your Highness suddenly inquire about this? Could it be related to Hong Lian?" She had harmed Hong Lian, so why was he showing such concern for her? Chapter 169, Does Your Highness Care About Her? Su Yingxue did not know why she cared so much about the relationship between Chui Han and Hong Lian. However, when she thought of how much Chui Han cared about Hong Lian, she was filled with anger. Chui Han had a perplexed expression in his eyes. He had asked just one question, so why was she suddenly upset? Inside this immaculate chamber, a folding screen separated the space. Mo Chi emerged from behind the screen and addressed Su Yingxue, Miss Su, your medical skills are exceptional, and your mother is the foremost female physician in the Great Qing dynasty. You're undoubtedly capable of countering this poison. Please, assist your highness. After his plea, Hong Lian's voice came from behind the screen, Thank you, Miss Su. That voice pricked Su Yingxue like a needle. She glanced back at Mo Chi. He was Chu Yihan's trusted aide, and if he was this anxious about Hong Lian, could she infer that Chu Yihan held similar concerns? Chu Yihan looked at Su Yingxue, his eyes slowly losing their luster. He reached out to pull her close, but Su Yingxue pushed him away with a cold expression. Your Highness, forgive my inadequacy. I cannot assist you in this matter. Why can't you help? If you could revive Consort Xiang even after her death, how can you possibly be unable to cure this poison? Mo Chi's anxiety was evident. Mo Chi. Chui Han reprimanded him sharply, and Mo Chi immediately lowered his head in apology. Miss Su, I acted hastily. But I implore you to help. Hong Lian's eyes have been poisoned. If she can't recover, it will be greatly inconvenient. The corners of Su Yingxue's mouth curled up in a cold, mocking arc. Of course, it would be inconvenient. If Hong Lian were relieved of her condition, her and Zi Wei's lives would be in peril. Yet, Su Yingxue persisted. She looked straight at Chui Han, resolute and direct. Your Highness cares deeply for her. Must you assist her in detoxifying this poison? Chui Han furrowed his brow and contemplated for a moment before parting his lips slightly. If you can, one hope you'll do your utmost to try. Su Yingxue felt a fiery surge within her. She rose abruptly. Just like that night when I saved Xinping, as long as I have the capability, one must save her, right? Chui Han, what do you take me for? Am I merely a tool for you to save people? No. Chui Han stood up quickly and took her hand, his palm radiating warmth. I never cared if you could save someone. What matters to me is you, what is it? If I couldn't save someone, if one were useless, would your Highness still treat me like this? Would he still be this kind to her? Su Yingxue's eyes brimmed with a hint of bitterness, a trace of moisture forming. Chui Han was about to blurt out that he would still treat her the same, but suddenly, Hong Lian interjected, Your Highness, I will take my leave to clear up the misunderstanding between you two. She rose and left from behind the screen, appearing to stumble due to her unclear vision, causing a commotion. Mo Chi rushed to assist her, saying, Hong Lian, please be careful. Su didn't say she wouldn't help. Your Highness was still discussing it with her. Mo Chi's words only deepened the hurt Su Yingxue felt. Your Highness and one were discussing saving lives, but I don't want to save them. Su Yingxue wiped her teary eyes, broke free from Chu Yihan's grasp, and fled. Su Yingxue. Chu Yihan wanted to chase after her, but Mo Chi shouted, Your Highness, bad news. Hong Lian's eyes, Chu Yihan furrowed his brow and went behind the screen. Hong Lian's eyes were bleeding, a horrifying sight. Chu Yihan ordered coldly, Stop her bleeding. Yes, Your Highness. Mo Chi was frantic as he brought medicine. However, Hong Lian refused to let him touch her and instead painstakingly wiped away the bloodstains. The handkerchief Mo Chi gave her was still stained with tears. Chapter 170, fake Hong Lian revealed her vulnerable side in front of Chui Han. Your Highness, if I can no longer see, I'm afraid I won't be able to manage the Silver Moon Pavilion. Don't be discouraged. One will write a letter and instruct someone to find a renowned physician for you. Chui Han turned and penned a letter, which he then had Mo Chi deliver. Mo Chi hurriedly handed the letter to the palace guards and rushed back. However, upon his return, he found Hong Lian kneeling beside Chui Han. She appeared nothing like her usual self. She spoke softly, Your Highness, what if one remain blind for the rest of my life? I won't let that happen, Chui Han replied coldly. His gaze didn't fall on Hong Lian but instead lingered on the chessboard, where Su Yingxue had made a game-changing move. Unaware of this, Hong Lian persisted in her plea. Your Highness, if one can see again, you will be my savior. 111 remember you for the rest of my life. Chui Han held a chess piece. It felt cold to the touch, yet he sensed the warmth Su Yingxue had left behind when she touched it. Mo Chi reappeared and informed them that the letter had been sent. Chui Han seemed to awaken from his thoughts. He held the chess piece in his hand, stood up, and spoke with a chilly tone, You don't have to do this. One saved you because of him. It has nothing to do with you. Su Yingxue has chosen not to help you, and that's her prerogative. Chui Han's words extinguished the glimmer of joy in Hong Lian's heart. She bit her lip, her tone filled with frustration. Yes, Your Highness. As Chui Han departed, Hong Lian suddenly panicked and shouted, Your Highness. Your Highness, can you stay and talk to Hong Lian a bit longer? Your Highness. She reached out as if trying to grasp something, but there was nothing there. Seeing her nearly stumble, Mo Chi extended his hand to support her. She grabbed onto his arm, her face lighting up with joy. Your Highness, you've returned. Your Highness has gone far away, Mo Chi sighed. Hong Lian's expression instantly turned cold and unreceptive. She released her grip on Mo Chi's hand and walked forward instinctively. Mo Chi glanced at his handkerchief, which he had just used to wipe away the bloodstains from Hong Lian. However, it wasn't her blood at all. Mo Chi couldn't help but warn her, Hong Lian, don't waste your efforts in front of Your Highness. Hong Lian clung to the screen, her sharp nails piercing the exquisite red sandalwood. What do you mean? Mo Chi tucked the handkerchief into his chest. Your Highness has already made it abundantly clear. If he discovers this handkerchief, you can forget about seeing him again in this lifetime. Do you dare to give the handkerchief to Your Highness? Hong Lian's tone carried a potent threat. Mo Chi chuckled. Why wouldn't one dare? He simply refused to do it. Because if he did, she would be heartbroken, angry, and miserable for the rest of her life. Hong Lian was furious, but Mo Chi was someone close to Chui Han. She couldn't harm him, so she suppressed her anger and tried to please him. Mo Chi, one implore you, please don't tell Your Highness. I can choose not to tell Your Highness, but I have a condition. Tell me. Hong Lian said calmly. As long as it didn't tarnish her image in Chui Han's eyes, she was willing to do anything. Could you try to like me? Chu Jinling wasn't partaking in this display of affection. When he emerged, he ran into Lin Cece, who was idly browsing in front of the bookshelves. Chapter 171, Great God Chu Jinling. The moment Lin Cece walked in, Su Yingxue rushed out. Lin Cece greeted her, but Su Yingxue ignored her. Chu Jinling noticed Lin Cece standing there in confusion and kindly stepped in to help smooth things over for Su Yingxue. Miss Lin, Dr. Su had some urgent matters today, which is why she left in a hurry. I see. Lin Cece nodded. I was wondering why she ignored me. Oh, Ninth Prince, what brings you here? As the daughter of a prominent military family, Lin Cece had some knowledge of royalty. Compared to her scoundrel of a brother, Chu Xiuwen, and the haughty Chu Qingye, she found Chu Jinling, who seemed to idle around all day, more endearing. Chu Jinling had a penchant for smiling, and when he did, it was like a breath of fresh air. I own this bookstore. As the proprietor, it's only natural for me to visit regularly. Proprietor. Lin Cici's eyes revealed a hint of surprise. I never expected you to own a bookstore. Miss Lin, are you underestimating me? I set up this entire bookstore, and each book was handpicked by me. Chu Jinling crossed his arms, appearing rather self-satisfied, as if to say, see, I have my talents. The bookstore is quite nice, but there aren't enough books. I searched for a long time and couldn't find what one wanted to read, Lin Cici sighed softly. Since she didn't have anything in her hand, she subconsciously reached for her whip. However, she felt empty-handed. The whip had been given to Su Yingxue. Too few books. Miss Lin, are you joking? This bookstore of mine is among the best in Jiangdu City, featuring 3 floors of bookshelves. How could you not find the books you want? Chu Jinling couldn't stand others saying this. What? There are more upstairs. Lin Cici was genuinely surprised. Silly girl, come on, let me take you upstairs to find your books. Chu Jinling playfully tapped Lin Cici's head and led her to the 2nd floor. Lin Cici wanted to find military books to read, so Chu Jinling took her to a corner on the 2nd floor, set up a ladder, and fetched a stack of military books for her. Wow, what kind of military book is this? I've never seen it before. And these? Peerless God of War, Beacon Fighters. What are these? How come I've never heard of them before? Lin Cici flipped through the book in her hand, treating it like a precious treasure. These are all God of War novels. I adapted them based on my imperial uncle's battlefield exploits. I've written his military techniques into these books, but I've presented them as stories to make them more engaging and lively. Since you like military books, you can choose from this category. Chu Jinling proudly raised an eyebrow, anticipating Lin Cici's compliments. Lin Cici didn't disappoint. Her large, sparkling eyes were filled with stars. 9th Prince, you're amazing. I've never seen anyone turn military tactics into storybooks like this. And there are so many of them, a whole 10 volumes. Ah, what's so great about it? I've been gossiping since the age of 10 and started writing books at 14. So far, I've only written a few hundred. Chu Jinling pulled out a folding fan from his waist and waved it with an air of elegance. Incredible. I think you're much more impressive than your brothers. Lin Cici's admiration was heartfelt. With the author himself by her side, Lin Cici pulled Chu Jinling into reading with her. When they reached exciting parts, she even engaged in discussions with him. It was rare for Chu Jinling to encounter someone who admired him so much. The more they talked, the happier he became. As their conversation deepened, he suddenly noticed that Lin Cici's eyes were exceptionally captivating. Especially when she looked at him, her eyes shone, as if they held all the stars in the sky. Chapter 172, Is Miss Smith Jealous? When Su Yingxue returned to the clinic, the more she thought about it, the angrier she became. She saw a few patients, but she couldn't quell the bitterness in her heart. She decided to head to the study in the backyard to read some medical books and calm down, but she sensed a hint of danger in the air. Without hesitation, she kicked the door open and found Ziwei facing off against several individuals inside. Su Yingxue widened her eyes. Hong Lian, what do you think you're doing? Several black-clad assassins immediately closed in on her, forming a protective circle around Hong Lian. Hong Lian sneered. Naturally, we're here to reclaim what belongs to our Silver Moon Pavilion. You're dreaming. This is my clinic, and there's nothing here that belongs to your Silver Moon Pavilion. Get out! Su Yingxue shouted angrily. Honorable Miss Su, genius Dr. Su, why so much anger? Could it be that you're jealous of the favor your highness shows me? Hong Lian's lips curled with pride. It wasn't pride in her role as the Silver Moon Pavilion's leader but rather pride in her victory in their previous encounter. Su Yingxue, aware that Hong Lian couldn't see, adjusted her breathing and chuckled. Hong Lian, before one poisoned you, I never imagined that the poison would not only narrow your eyes but also thicken your skin. Humph. Su Yingxue, do you think that your quick tongue can change the fact that your highness treats me well? Hong Lian's voice dripped with disdain. Why should one bother changing something that doesn't concern me? If he truly treats you well, then why are you still blind? Su Yingxue had an innate talent for provoking people. The stupidity of her past life had given way to sharp wit in this one. Her motto was simple: if someone didn't bother her, she wouldn't bother them. But if someone crossed her, Hong Lian's anger flared, and she waved her hand, ordering, "Find it. If you can't, take all the books from here." Are you looking for my mother's diary? No need. I didn't put it here. Where I've hidden it, you'll never find it, Su Yingxue said, crossing her arms. It's either in this clinic or the Marquis Manor. Su Yingxue, do you think I wouldn't dare to enter the Marquis Manor? Hong Lian gritted her teeth. She had led the Silver Moon Pavilion for so long, and nobody had dared to be so audacious in front of her. If you want to enter the Marquis Manor, one can take you there. But even if one gave you a month, you wouldn't find my mother's diary, even if you dug 3 feet into the Marquis Manor. Su Yingxue informed her calmly that she was the only one who could enter the Medicine King's Valley within her consciousness. Not to mention digging 3 feet into the Marquis Manor, even if Hong Lian dug 3 feet into the entire Great Qing dynasty, she still wouldn't find it. Su Yingxue, just you wait. The day one regain my sight will be the day of your death. Hong Lian left those words behind and departed under the guard of her assassins. Su Yingxue's heart sank slightly. Hong Lian's words posed no real threat to her, but they served as a reminder. With Hong Lian's skills, she could always find someone to cure the poison. However, during the time she had been blind, she wouldn't be able to oversee every aspect of the Silver Moon Pavilion. She could infiltrate the Silver Moon Pavilion once more. Once inside the Silver Moon Pavilion, she would discover who exactly had come to trade and buy her mother's handwritten letter. Ziwei, Su Yingxue called softly, and the shadowy figure immediately moved to her side. Su Yingxue winked at him. Tonight, we're going to the Silver Moon Pavilion. Ziwei nodded. After night fell, Su Yingxue donned a black robe that blended seamlessly with the night, just like Ziwei. Under his guidance, they infiltrated the Silver Moon Pavilion. The terrain was complex, and security was tight. Su Yingxue had to remain vigilant for any poison traps in the security. After all, the Silver Moon Pavilion's trade network was extensive, and all kinds of poisons could be traded here. Their defenses might also employ these tactics. Chapter 173. Trap Ziwei had been living in the Silver Moon Pavilion for many years, so he was well acquainted with its layout. He led Su Yingxue into the Central Academy, where all the transaction records were stored. Su Yingxue gazed at the tightly sealed door and mused that the Silver Moon Pavilion was no different from other places. The guards could be easily evaded, and even this pavilion lacked any distinctive features. It was somewhat different from what she had imagined. As she took her first step, Ziwei suddenly grasped her hand. We've fallen into a trap. His deep and hoarse voice resonated with a sense of impending danger. Before he could protect Su Yingxue within his embrace, the courtyard echoed with the sound of arrows. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. These were thick, heavily weighted arrows, 10 times more lethal than those crafted within the imperial palace. Su Yingxue widened her eyes in astonishment. Indeed, there's quite a difference. She had underestimated the situation. By the time she snapped out of it, Hong Lian and several assassins were already perched on the rafters. Hong Lian scolded sternly, "Who dares to trespass into my Silver Moon Pavilion?" Su Yingxue raised an eyebrow. "Are you genuinely blind, or are you pretending?" Hong Lian had been in her study during daylight hours and now appeared before her. Su Yingxue didn't doubt that tonight was a trap set by Hong Lian to ensnare her. And she had fallen right into it. "Miss Su, we have no grudges between us. Even if you're unwilling to treat me, why barge into my Silver Moon Pavilion and disrupt my rules?" Hong Lian proclaimed with a tone of magnanimity. Su Yingxue sneered. "Pavilion Master Hong Lian, are you genuinely asking this question?" She forcefully seized her mother's diary, raised a lion to harm her, and even intruded into her study. And now, they were saying she disrupted their rules. "My Silver Moon Pavilion has always conducted itself by the rules. But I apologize, Miss Su, tonight you and number 1 must stay." Hong Lian raised her hand, formed a fist, and her assassins descended. Su Yingxue was protected by Ziwei behind her. When she saw him rush out recklessly, her heart tightened. She had been careless. The assassins below, when working together, were challenging for Ziwei to handle alone, despite his superiority in one-on-one combat. However, Ziwei had been an assassin for many years and understood one thing very well. That was captured the leader first. By capturing Hong Lian, he and Su Yingxue might escape this intricate trap unscathed. Ziwei inflicted injuries upon the others, preventing them from being able to concentrate. He then leaped into the air and thrust his sword toward Hong Lian. Although Hong Lian possessed formidable martial arts skills, her blindness meant that after exchanging only a couple of moves with Ziwei, her arm was pierced by his blade. Oh! Hong Lian tumbled heavily. Just as Ziwei was about to seize her, he sensed a swift cold gleam stabbing towards him. Despite his years of combat experience and exceptional speed, this sword arrived at an astonishing pace. He narrowly avoided a fatal strike but couldn't evade the second sword. Puchi! The Qing Feng's sword pierced his abdomen. He attempted to counterattack but suffered a forceful palm strike. His flexible sword shattered under Chu Yihan's palm force, its sharp fragments slashing across his body. A surge of potent internal energy sent him hurtling from the rafter. Su Yingxue watched him land and rushed to assist him. Ziwei! Get out of the way! To avoid injuring her, Ziwei managed his force and flew to the opposite side. Su Yingxue merely stumbled, but he collided with the wall. The arrow that had previously fallen on the wall embedded itself into his body, causing intense pain. Puff! Ziwei expelled several mouthfuls of blood. He raised his head, his gaze filled with concern as he looked at Su Yingxue. Be careful. Chapter 174. Enraged Chu Yihan. Su Yingxue ran towards him with all her might, but she was caught by Chu Yihan, who had descended from the sky. Chu Yihan pinched her shoulders and said coldly, "He's a traitor to the Silver Moon Pavilion, don't go over." Chu Yihan raised his sword and was about to kill Ziwei when Su Yingxue blocked his sword in horror. No! Chu Yihan quickly withdrew his sword. The sword aura brushed past Su Yingxue's cheek and cut off a strand of her hair. Su Yingxue had no time to notice the surprise in Chu Yihan's eyes. She turned and embraced Ziwei. Witnessing his pale, purplish complexion, she anxiously retrieved a heart protection pill and fed it to him. Desperately, she used a handkerchief to staunch his wound. She resembled a frantic child. Su Yingxue! Chu Yihan's forehead veins bulged as he witnessed her cradling the assassin. What's your relationship with him? Why are you protecting him so vehemently? He's mine. Su Yingxue turned around and roared. She never anticipated Chu Yihan's abrupt appearance, nearly resulting in Ziwei's death. Yours? Chu Yihan's face turned icy, and a pervasive aura of imminent violence filled the courtyard. Chu Yihan pointed his sword at Ziwei. This man defected from the Silver Moon Pavilion. He's unworthy. He didn't defect. One was the one who took him out of the Silver Moon Pavilion. Every time Chu Yihan uttered something, Su Yingxue countered with force, as if an insurmountable enmity existed between them. You took him away from the Silver Moon Pavilion. Chu Yihan slightly furrowed his brows. The Silver Moon Pavilion has strict rules. Didn't your Hong Lian inform you? She wanted my mother's letter, invited me over, and then one took Ziwei away. Su Yingxue's eyes glared at Hong Lian, radiating a murderous intent. Hong Lian's lips curled into a seductive curve. This was precisely the reaction she desired. Although she couldn't see it now, she could envision how anguished Su Yingxue's expression must be. The Ziwei she had meticulously trained had nearly perished under Chu Yihan's blade. And Chu Yihan, who cared so deeply for her. How could she not care for Chu Yihan? Chu Yihan frowned. One didn't come here today for her, but one didn't expect that your dealings with the Silver Moon Pavilion were incomplete. No wonder she had assassins by her side. No wonder he sent Mo Qi to handle the assassins by her side, allowing Ziwei to escape repeatedly. So it was Su Yingxue who protected him and tended to his wounds. Su Yingxue hadn't anticipated that Chu Yihan would reprimand her for it. She wore a cold smile. Why? Because one didn't complete the transaction. Your Highness plans to assist the Silver Moon Pavilion in killing Ziwei and me. You're fully aware I wouldn't do that. Chu Yihan's eyes reflected anguish. How could he bear to harm her? He pointed his sword at Ziwei. Since everything originated from him, once he's gone, you and the Silver Moon Pavilion will have no further obligations to each other. Your Highness, Miss Su, and Number One have been together for so long. It's likely she has some feelings for him. Miss Su even named him Ziwei. It seems she's quite fond of him, Hong Lian sighed softly. She seemed to mention the naming matter casually, but it struck the chord that Chu Yihan cared about the most. He couldn't tolerate the person he cared about holding another in her heart. Step aside. Chu Yihan barked. His eyes reddened. Seeing Su Yingxue holding the hand of this man, he couldn't suppress his killing intent. Chapter 175. This king completes the deal for her, step aside. This sentence was spoken by Ziwei as he held Su Yingxue's hand. His breath was weak, his voice hoarse. Saying this inflicted even more pain on Su Yingxue's heart. She held Ziwei firmly and turned to face Chu Yihan. Her exquisite eyes were filled with determination. One won't let you. You can't kill him. Unless you kill me first. What did you just say? Chu Yihan's hand holding the sword trembled, and a hint of pain was hidden in his icy eyes. Did she care about him so much? What if I insist on killing him? Chu Yihan's eyes turned red, and his intent to kill grew stronger. I won't let this happen. Su Yingxue pronounced each word. She opened her arms, shielding herself behind them, using her body to confront Chu Yihan's blade. If he had persisted in striking her with the sword, she wouldn't have dodged. You. Go. Ziwei covered his wound, his voice strained and managed to utter 2 words. Su Yingxue didn't look back at him but firmly stated, I'm your master, and I'll protect you. If she couldn't even protect him, then what was the point of snatching him away from the Silver Moon Pavilion? Moonlight bathed the ground in a pale white glow. Chu Yihan's gaze was colder than the moonlight. He sheathed his sword and turned to Hong Lian. "Let them go." Hong Lian smiled faintly. "Yes, Your Highness." Hong Lian waved her hand. "Clear the way for Miss Su and Number 1. The assassins surrounding them immediately dispersed. Su Yingxue and Ziwei were no longer a threat. Su Yingxue carried Ziwei on her shoulder and walked away with him. She didn't even glance back at Chu Yihan. Hong Lian quietly followed Chu Yihan's footsteps. She was familiar with every corner of the Silver Moon Pavilion, but she nearly stumbled on the steps. Chu Yihan helped her up. Feeling the strength of his arm, Hong Lian stood up shyly and softly said, "Thank you, Your Highness." "No need." Chu Yihan withdrew his hand coldly. "What do you plan to do about her deal with the Silver Moon Pavilion?" Chu Yihan's eyes were as icy as ever. Hong Lian had already prepared an excuse. She wanted Chu Yihan to owe her a favor, so she said, "Hong Lian knows that Your Highness cares about Miss Su." Miss Su took Number 1 away. According to the Silver Moon Pavilion's rules, neither of them can be spared. But considering Your Highness' feelings, I will complete her trade. Before she could finish, Chu Yihan interrupted her. Hong Lian's expression froze. Chu Yihan wanted to complete the trade for Su Yingxue. He knew the Silver Moon Pavilion's rules very well. Hong Lian's lips trembled. "Your Highness, this trade is no small matter. If Your Highness wants to personally complete it, that would inevitably require a much heavier price." She couldn't bear it. She couldn't bear it. "I have already said it. I will complete this trade. From now on, Su Yingxue will owe nothing to the Silver Moon Pavilion." Chu Yihan left immediately after saying this. Hong Lian chased after him, her face pale. "Your Highness, please don't. Don't go. Your Highness." All. Before, she wanted Chu Yihan to assist her, but this time, she tumbled down the stairs. She lay on the ground, half of her sharp nails broken, and her fingers bleeding. She gazed into the air and murmured, "Your Highness, why? Is Su Yingxue that exceptional? Is she worth any heavy price?" Su Yingxue brought Ziwei back to the clinic and tended to his wounds. Then, she immediately went to prepare medicine for him. Chapter 176. The person who chased after you. When he applied the medicine, he was like a controlled piece of wood. He did whatever Su Yingxue told him to do. However, when Su Yingxue brought the medicine in front of him, his face was expressionless. He did not move or open his mouth. "Do you want to drink it? If not, I'll make you drink it." Su Yingxue, with a worried expression, urged him. Ziwei continued to remain silent. Su Yingxue became so anxious that tears welled up in her eyes. Seeing this, Ziwei pointed towards her waist. Following his gesture, Su Yingxue retrieved a bag of candies from her belt. It was the same candy she had fed him last time. She bit her lip and chuckled softly. "You're still thinking about candy, huh?" The purple hue at the corners of Ziwei's eyes deepened, and the radiance it emitted grew colder. However, his eyes held warmth, especially when Su Yingxue presented the candy. Su Yingxue picked up the broken candies from the paper bag. All of them were shattered, with not a single intact piece left. She pursed her lips and negotiated with Ziwei. "How about you drink the medicine first, and I promise to buy you candy first thing tomorrow morning." "No." Ziwei firmly fixed his gaze on the candy. Su Yingxue glanced at the sky. It was already past curfew, and all the shops were closed. She wouldn't be able to buy candy at this hour. But she couldn't possibly let him avoid taking his medicine just because there was no candy, right? Su Yingxue set the broken candies aside and held the medicine, coaxing him gently. First, drink your medicine. I promise 111 get you candy as soon as the sun rises tomorrow. As she spoke, Ziwei had already picked up the half-broken bag of candy and put it into his mouth. Then, he drank the medicine from her hand. Su Yingxue didn't know what to say. But the fact that he was now willing to take his medicine, without her resorting to trickery or needle injections, was a significant change. However, the wounds on his body, including the one inflicted by Chuihan, still made her feel guilty. Su Yingxue sat by the bedside, organizing the events of tonight in her mind. It was true that she had fallen into Hong Lian's trap, and Chu Yihan's appearance probably wasn't as coincidental as it seemed. Moreover, Chu Yihan's words suggested that he had known Ziwei had been with her all along. And Ziwei had been injured throughout. During the spring banquet, she noticed that Mo Qi was also severely injured. She suddenly asked Ziwei, "Are the people who have been pursuing you from the 9th Prince's mansion?" Ziwei nodded. Yes. Su Yingxue's heart was instantly flooded with mixed emotions. Why didn't you tell me? Ziwei lowered his gaze and, with a hoarse voice, replied, "One didn't want to bother you." This statement hit Su Yingxue's heart like a punch. She felt remorseful towards him. She reached out to poke Ziwei's face and gently said, "You must not hide such things from me in the future. I am your master, understand?" Ziwei had heard many orders from his master, but they were always cold and domineering. However, only Su Yingxue gave him orders with such tenderness. Ziwei obediently nodded. "I will never hide anything from you in the future. I will faithfully protect you." Su Yingxue stayed by Ziwei's side throughout the night. She only relaxed when she saw that his wounds weren't inflamed. However, she knew that Ziwei wasn't one to take proper care of himself. She applied a sleeping draught to the silver needles and administered a few injections to ensure he slept soundly. She then instructed Manager Qi to feed him medicine and meals regularly. This was the only way she could prevent him from moving too much and disturbing his wounds. After a night of hard work, Manager Qi noticed that Su Yingxue looked exhausted and had the lingering scent of blood on her. He didn't dare to inquire about what had happened but expressed concern. "Miss, how about taking a break from your duties as a doctor today? Rest for the day." Chapter 177. Chu Qingye came to look for her. Su Yingxue glanced at the many patients waiting in line in the lobby and waved her hand. "No need. I'll go change, and then you can let the patients in." Sigh. Manager Qi sighed. Su Yingxue's personality was so stubborn that no one could persuade her. Su Yingxue went to change into a clean set of clothes and sat in the treatment room. After seeing a few patients, she was a little tired. Manager Qi carefully distributed the patients to the other doctors and allowed Su Yingxue to rest in the treatment room for a while. However, a person suddenly walked in and headed straight for Su Yingxue's treatment room. Manager Qi quickly stopped him. "Hello, Dr. Su is resting. Please go to the other doctors. I'm not here to see a doctor." Chu Qingye was extraordinarily handsome, carrying the noble aura of a prince from the royal family. As soon as he appeared, Manager Qi couldn't stop him. Su Yingxue had just taken a brief rest at the table when Chu Qingye walked in. Upon seeing the exhaustion on her face, he had initially intended to scold her, but now he felt a pang of sympathy. He instinctively reached out to hold Su Yingxue's hand. However, Su Yingxue woke up in reflex. Her eyes widened suddenly. After seeing Chu Qingye's face clearly, her beautiful face carried a hint of mockery. "Seventh Prince, you've graced us with your presence. What terminal illness have you contracted? Su Yingxue, is this how you speak to me?" Chu Qingye's temper wasn't bad, but whenever he saw Su Yingxue, she would easily provoke him. I can't give you the attitude that your highness wants, but someone else will. Su Yingxue stood up and rubbed her sore temples. She pointed at Chu Qingye's back and said, "The door is there, your highness. Take care." She couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with him. Su Yingxue. I'm here today to inform you to go to the prince's mansion and treat my third brother. You must cure my third brother. Chu Qingye's good temper was gone after being chased away by her. He was only left with gritted teeth and a hot-blooded desire to conquer Su Yingxue. Why? Su Yingxue raised her eyebrows. Seventh prince, do you think that I, Su Yingxue, am a pushover? Let you do whatever you want. I don't think so. As long as you can cure third brother, I can put in a good word for you in front of my mother. When the old general returns to court and mentions our marriage, my mother will not disagree, Chu Qingye argued. Su Yingxue was speechless. You're still thinking about marriage? Su Yingxue thought. Su Yingxue's face was cold. Unfortunately, she was no longer the Su Yingxue from her previous life. Your Highness, the engagement between you and me was just a joke. My grandfather might have already forgotten about this matter. There's no need to trouble him to enter the palace again, Su Yingxue said impatiently. She was about to walk out of the treatment room when Chu Qingye grabbed her hand and pulled her into his arms. Do you hate me so much? Su Yingxue, have you had a change of heart? You've fallen in love with the 9th imperial uncle, haven't you? Chu Qingye. Don't spout nonsense. Su Yingxue kicked him away, and her face flushed red. Am I right? Chu Qingye's lips curled into a sneer. The 9th imperial uncle has always been arrogant and condescending, but you can touch his Qingfeng sword. Su Yingxue, one think you've been colluding with each other for a long time. Paw. Su Yingxue gave him a tight slap. Chu Qingye, if you say one more word, I'll make sure you won't be able to leave the clinic. She had been holding the poison in her hand for a long time. Chapter 178, Su Yuro and her daughter's vicious plan, how will you stop me from leaving? Chu Qingye was trying to provoke her. He knew he wouldn't lose to her in a fight. However, he didn't expect Su Yingxue to sprinkle white powder on him and then stab him with 3 needles. His entire body felt as if it was being bitten by thousands of snakes and insects. Oh! Su Yingxue! How dare you! Chu Qingye was in so much pain that a cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Su Yingxue then stabbed him with 3 needles again. This time, she intended to make Chu Qingye's suffering even more intense. Chu Qingye's face turned pale. He gritted his teeth and shouted, Su Yingxue, stop. With a swift motion, Su Yingxue withdrew the silver needles. While Chu Qingye's pain subsided, his eyes were still filled with fear. Su Yingxue shouted coldly, get lost. He clutched his chest and left with great difficulty. However, he couldn't resist turning around and telling Su Yingxue, the engagement between you and me will never be voided. Su Yingxue snorted coldly. She didn't care. She only cared about his words, you've long fallen in love with the 9th imperial uncle, haven't you? These words were like a strong net that wrapped around her heart, tightening it, and causing her to feel suffocated and in pain. The news of Chu Qingye leaving the clinic in a sorry state quickly spread through the streets. Su Yingxue and Tongchang Medical Center had their share of popularity. Plus, with Su Yuro's curiosity, this news reached her ears in no time. She swung her hand and shattered a white jade teacup. 2 tears rolled down from her eyelashes. Her eyes were filled with hatred and reluctance. This bitch. Not only did she seduce the 9th prince, but she also managed to capture your highness. How could your highness fall for that woman and her schemes? On the other hand, Lu Shulan remained much calmer compared to her. She held the golden thread in her hand and played with the incense powder in the incense burner. She smiled coldly and said, "As long as they're men, they'll all cheat sooner or later. When they're used to women admiring them, they'll start yearning for what they can't have." Su Yuro pursed her lips and twisted the handkerchief in her hand when she heard this. Lu Shulan took her hand and patted it gently. "Ruer, think about it. Hasn't it always been like this? Suing Shue used to idolize him, and your subtle displays of affection towards him made him focus on you. Now, Suing Shue has simply used your tactics against you." Su Yuro gritted her teeth, her eyes welling up with tears. "So what can I do? Can I have another chance? Now, the seventh prince's heart is completely in her hands. During the spring banquet, your highness looked at me far less than he did at her. He even went to look for her today." She felt too embarrassed to admit to Lu Shulan that Chu Qingye hadn't visited her in a long time. She was in a state of panic. Lu Shulan held her hand and reassured her not to worry. Su Yuro was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. Now, Suing Shue is the center of attention in the entire Jiangdu city. She has gained recognition in front of the emperor. How can one not be anxious? "Mother, help me. Please, help me." She pulled Lu Shuyan's hand and acted coquettish. For so many years, every time her mother taught her, she would make sure Suing Shue suffered a lot and held her accountable. Now, as long as her mother was around, Suing Shue would not have it easy. "I will teach you a method that will cause trouble for Suing Shue. When something happens to her, you can deal with her slowly," Lu Shulan said, and her eyes were wrapped in layers of schemes. After hearing her mother's words, Su Yuro left immediately for the minister's estate. Wu Ruofai's legs hadn't fully recovered yet. She refused to take her medicine or eat. She couldn't afford to fall or bump into anything. She caused a commotion in her room all day long. Wu Hongtao, who had initially pitied her, occasionally came to check on her injuries. Chapter 179. Wu Ruofei is staying at the clinic. Seeing her in such a shrewish state, he couldn't be bothered to come again. He was in a precarious situation, and with Madame Wu's recent embarrassing incident, his two sons were becoming more and more disappointed. It was driving him to the brink of frustration. When Su Yuro arrived, Wu Ruofei was crying and refusing to eat. Feng He held the food, trembling beside her. "Miss, please don't harm your health. You should eat a little." "I won't eat. I won't. It's all your fault, you servants. How could my mother do something like that? My mother wouldn't. And my brothers. Oh. They're supposed to be so capable. Feng He, come over here." Wu Ruofei shouted like a madwoman. Feng He was trembling, every step filled with fear. She knew that when Wu Ruofei opened her mouth, she intended to bite someone again. Ever since her limbs were broken and she couldn't move, her way of venting her anger had become biting people. All the maids in the room had been bitten, their bodies covered in bruises. Just yesterday, in a fit of rage, she had bitten off half of a young girl's ear. That girl was only 13 years old, and her appearance was now permanently marred. Feng He had served Wu Ruofei for many years, prodding her temper countless times. But now that Wu Ruofei's anger was directed at her, she was terrified. "Are you dead? You're walking so slowly. Hurry up and come over." Wu Ruofei glared at her and roared. Feng He closed her eyes and began to tremble before she even reached Wu Ruofei. As she got closer, Wu Ruofei opened her mouth and viciously bit into Feng He's arm. "Oh! Miss, please be gentle." Feng He cried out in pain. It was hurt. "Oh! Oh!" Wu Ruofei used all her strength to bite Feng He's arm until it bled. "Alright, get lost." Feng He wiped away her tears and left, only to run into Su Yuro. Su Yuro had been quietly observing from outside the door for a while. When she saw Wu Ruofei in such a state, she wiped the gloating expression from her face and greeted her with a gentle and compassionate demeanor. Initially, Wu Ruofei didn't respond to her kindness, but when Su Yuro mentioned having a way to deal with Su Yingxue, Wu Ruofei's eyes lit up. After hearing Su Yuro's words, she snorted coldly. "Why should one beg Su Yingxue? Even if she kneels in front of me, one won't let her treat me. Ruofei, don't you want to get better as soon as possible? If an ordinary doctor treats you, you'll have to stay in bed for at least another month. But I've heard that Su Yingxu's treatment for muscle and bone injuries is miraculous. If she heals you, won't you be able to stand up much sooner? By then, you won't have to worry about not being able to deal with her." Upon hearing the possibility of teaching Su Yingxue a lesson, Wu Ruofei's eyes started turning red. "I want to get better as soon as possible. I want to avenge my mother and my brothers. That's the right attitude. Minister Wu doesn't have time to attend to you now. Tomorrow, have someone carry you to Su Yingxu's clinic. Her clinic has recently opened a patient ward. You can stay there for easy observation." Brother Hao. When Su Hao was mentioned, Wu Ruofei's excitement grew. She had made up her mind. Even if Su Yingxue refused to accept her, she would stay at her clinic. The following day, she had people carry her to the clinic in a grand procession. Su Yuro was concerned that she might inadvertently reveal something, so she even prepared a script for her to remember. If Su Yingxue rejected her and refused to treat her, she would create a scene at the clinic to tarnish her reputation. Chapter 180. 10,000 Su Yuro stood nearby, watching as Wu Ruofei was carried into the clinic. A trace of cruelty flickered in her eyes. "Su Yingxue, even if you refuse to accept Wu Ruofei this time, you will still suffer consequences," Su Yuro muttered. Wu Ruofei was brought into the clinic and explicitly requested that Su Yingxue treat her. Manager Qi had an exceptional memory, so how could he forget her previous conflicts with Su Yingxue? He quickly put on a smile and said, "Miss, our Dr. Su is currently occupied. You'll need to wait for a few hours. Why don't we have another doctor attend to you? Dr. Du, here, is particularly skilled at treating muscle and bone injuries. I'm a female patient. One can't allow a male doctor to examine me. How will one ever marry in the future? Today is the 15th day of the month. Isn't Dr. Su known for treating women? If she has many patients, 111 wait." Wu Ruofei sat in a wheelchair surrounded by 4 male servants and 4 maids, occupying a considerable space. Having attracted attention, she recited everything Su Yuro had coached her to say. Manager Qi found it quite challenging to handle the situation. He instructed his apprentice to keep an eye on Wu Ruofei while he went to consult Su Yingxue. Su Yingxue furrowed her brow. Did Wu Ruofei say that? Yes, indeed. Miss Wu was behaving completely differently from her previous disruptive self. One had her wait outside, and she didn't even get angry. This time, it seems she came prepared, Manager Qi said, clearly worried. It was too difficult for his young miss to open this clinic. There were always people who wanted to find trouble with her. Never mind. Have someone bring her inside. Ill-treat her. Su Yingxue waved her hand dismissively. But miss, what if she intends to harm you, then I'll disable her first. Su Yingxue's eyes flashed with cold determination. If she could break Wu Ruofei's limbs once, she could break her bones twice. Wu Ruofei was carried into Su Yingxue's treatment room. With no one to rely on, she felt somewhat apprehensive about facing Su Yingxue alone. Su Yingxue exuded an icy aura when her face turned cold. She approached Wu Ruofei, who trembled in fear. What are you doing? Su Yingxue rolled her eyes. You came for medical treatment, so how can I treat you if one don't examine you? You. Be gentle. Oh. It hurts. Su Yingxue, what are you doing? Be gentler. It hurts. Father. Mother. Sob. It hurts. Su Yingxue removed all the bandages from Wu Ruofei's hands and feet, inspecting her wounds. She spoke icily, I'll apply some medicine and put a cast on you. Go back and rest. You'll be fine in less than a month. I'm not going back. Su Yingxue, one want to stay here and recover. Wu Ruofei cried out in pain, her voice tearful yet stubborn. I don't have a place for recovery here. Nonsense, you have a ward here. I'm a patient here to see a doctor, so one can stay here. Su Yingxue raised an eyebrow. You can recover at home. How did you even know that I opened a ward here? It had only been 3 days since she established the ward, and Wu Ruofei was already eager to move in. Such a coincidence seemed unlikely. Wu Ruofei appeared fearful of being exposed and hastily explained, it was my father who said so. He doesn't have time to take care of me, and here, as long as it helps me recover quickly, one don't care. I want to stay in the ward. Su Yingxue sneered. You can stay in the ward, but first, pay the consultation fee. How much? 10,000 taels. Su Yingxue, how can you be so heartless? Seeing a doctor and staying in a ward couldn't possibly cost 10,000 taels. Wu Ruofei gritted her teeth. Do you want to stay or not? Chapter 181, Care About the Ninth Prince. It's up to you whether you want to stay or not. If you stayed here, the clinic was responsible for your food, clothing, accommodation, transportation, and even for your recovery. Do you think I opened this clinic to run at a loss? Su Yingxue coldly admonished. She didn't believe Wu Ruofei could produce 10,000 taels to stay in her ward. However, Wu Ruofei, going against her usual demeanor, insisted, 10,000 taels it is. I'll have phone he returned to the residence to fetch the money. You. Please arrange a room for me first. I want a single room, the best available. Su Yingxue raised an eyebrow, stating, for the best single room, it's 20,000 taels. Su Yingxue, you're raising the price on the spot. Wu Ruofei gritted her teeth in frustration. 20,000 taels. Her father's annual salary wasn't even close to that. Su Yingxue's expression remained icy. She reiterated, do you want to stay or not? I'm staying. Wu Ruofei clenched her teeth. For the sake of challenging Su Yingxue and for her beloved brother Hao, she was prepared to go bankrupt if necessary. In the afternoon, the minister's estate delivered 20,000 taels of silver. Su Yingxue instructed manager Qi to arrange a ward for Wu Ruofei and placed her in the innermost room on the 3rd floor to prevent her from causing any problems. Manager Qi carried out the orders. In the evening, Wu Jinyan came back from work. She was temporarily staying at the clinic and heard about this from manager Qi. Since Su Yingxue was also residing there and rarely visited the Marquis Manor, they had more opportunities to converse. Observing that Su Yingxue had barely eaten, Wu Jinyan asked, is this all because of my sister? Su Yingxue used her chopsticks to poke at the rice in her bowl. Abruptly, she dropped her chopsticks and replied in a subdued voice, If you don't want to, you could return the silver to her, and she could return to the residence. However, 111 make sure to help you earn back those 20,000 taels through 1,000 Jia Pavilion. Wu Jinyan comforted her by patting her hand. She knew that Su Yingxue had invested a significant amount of silver to establish the 1,000-jiao pavilion for her. If it weren't for the fact that both the clinic and 1,000-jiao pavilion needed to run smoothly, Su Yingxue probably wouldn't have accommodated Wu Ruofei. Su Yingxue shook her head and confessed in a somber tone, "It's not just about the money." Wu Ruofei came prepared, but there was someone behind her pulling the strings in the shadows. "If I don't accept her and she spreads damaging rumors about the clinic's branch, we might face endless troubles here. It's better to take her in and see what tricks she might attempt." Wu Jinyan initially worried that Su Yingxue might not see through the situation. However, after hearing her words, she felt more assured and less concerned. Still, seeing Su Yingxue's persistent furrowed brows, Wu Jinyan tentatively asked, "Do you have something else on your mind?" Su Yingxue quickly relaxed her brow, diverting her attention to eating a few mouthfuls of rice. "No. Really? Aren't you concerned about Ziwei's injuries?" Su Yingxue innocently shook her head. "One administered medicine to him. He'll recover." "Then, is it about the 7th prince?" Wu Jinyan continued to probe. Su Yingxue let out a light snort. "What's there to ponder about him?" "Then, is it the 9th prince?" When Wu Jinyan asked this question, even the air fell silent for a long time. The food in Su Yingxue's mouth suddenly lost its flavor. She chewed and swallowed it, but it felt like a lump was stuck in her throat, as uncomfortable as a stone wedged there. As she choked, her eyes welled up with tears. Wu Jinyan hastily patted her back to help her breathe. Su Yingxue drank a large gulp of water before managing to swallow the food that had caused her to choke. Seeing her in this state, Wu Jinyan sighed. "Since you care so much, why make things difficult for yourself?" "I didn't." Su Yingxue's eyes were still red, filled with determination. Chapter 182, Who Your Sister Likes. "Alright, you didn't think about 9th prince." Wu Jinyan teased her. In these past few days, Su Yingxue's tightly held emotions suddenly crumbled. Yes, she missed Chuihan. Since her return from the Silver Moon Pavilion, Chuihan hadn't appeared before her, as if he had vanished from the face of the earth. Perhaps, he was simply beyond reach, and nobody had the means to track his whereabouts. However, he had provided her with a sense of security, an assurance that he would be there whenever she needed him. Now that he had abruptly disappeared, she felt an overwhelming sense of unease. Observing her melancholy, Wu Jinyan, understanding her stubborn nature, refrained from further jests. She tidied up the table with Jilan and left the room. Upon returning to her chamber, Su Hao was already waiting with a handful of items. He had scoured the entire city to purchase clothes, accessories, hairpins, and cosmetics. Wu Jinyan chuckled. "If you keep buying like this, rumors will spread throughout Jiangdu City that young General Su is obsessed with cosmetics." Su Hao handed her the items, a hint of embarrassment on his face. However, he calmly responded to her previous statement, "I've never cared about what others say. One only care about you." Su Hao held her hand, his palm radiating warmth. "Jinyan." His gentle call felt like an invisible hand that had captured her heart. Wu Jinyan blushed faintly, and as Su Hao embraced her, she didn't resist. Leaning into his embrace and listening to his strong heartbeat, she felt at ease. Today, one noticed Yingxue seemed down. "If you have the time, you might consider visiting her," Wu Jinyan suggested, displaying great empathy. Su Yingxue might exude strength and courage on the surface, but deep down, she remained a soft-hearted girl. "Has something happened to her?" Su Hao's eyes showed traces of urgency. Wu Jinyan proceeded to share all recent events with him. While they hadn't attended the spring banquet, Wu Jinyan was well informed, and Su Hao had heard a bit about it. When it came to his sister, Su Hao's chiseled brows furrowed. If Wu Ruofei intends to cause trouble and harm my sister, one won't spare her. Wu Jinyan gently caressed Su Hao's face, her eyes filled with infatuation. She loved his serious and responsible demeanor. I'm not worried that my dear sister will stir up major trouble. One believing Xue can handle her. However, she appears to be missing Ninth Prince. Ninth Prince? Su Hao was taken aback. He knew that Ninth Prince had shown favoritism toward his sister, likely due to their grandfather's instructions. But Su Yingxue had feelings for him. Seeing Su Hao's puzzled expression, Wu Jinyan found it amusing. You fool! Can't you see that your sister likes Ninth Prince? Chapter 183. Choosy Wu Ruofei. Wu Jinyan saw Su Hao's stunned expression and asked him, why? Don't you approve of her being with Ninth Prince? These words made Su Hao frown slightly. This is not something one can decide. I think. Even grandfather can't make that decision. Everything depends on Su Yingxu's choice. But you look very worried. Wu Jinyan could discern all of Su Hao's emotions. Su Hao nodded. Ninth Prince's status is noble and unfathomable. Although my sister is different from before, she is still young. If the matter between the two of them is spread, the one who will be hurt will only be my sister. Su Hao was only worried that he hadn't given enough to his sister, whom he had doted on for more than 10 years. He didn't know how to react when he suddenly found out that there was another man who liked Su Yingxue. It was true that the person was noble and powerful enough, but as her brother, his first reaction was still unhappiness. Is that all you're worried about? Wu Jinyan teased him. Su Hao lowered his head and touched her delicate face with the tip of his nose. He admitted frankly, also, I never thought that my younger sister would have someone she likes and get married in the future. I always felt that she would always be my younger sister. What about me? Wu Jinyan looked up at him. There was a significant height difference between her and Su Hao. She had to raise her head to see his handsome face. The lighting wasn't very bright, but Wu Jinyan felt that Su Hao's eyes were especially bright. When he leaned over, his hot breath carried the scent of desire, but he only kissed her gently on the forehead. Start with emotion and stop with etiquette. Su Hao kissed her and smiled. You will be my only wife. After Wu Ruofei sent someone to deliver the money, she stayed in the clinic. She was as picky as she was at home. Whenever the apprentice who changed her dressing didn't do his best, she would scold the female apprentice until she cried. Being a girl herself, she couldn't send a rude male apprentice. Manager Qi had a headache for several days. Su Yingxue had endured it for a few days. When Wu Ruofei made a fuss again, she took the tray and personally changed her dress. Get lost. Don't touch me with your dirty hands. You look lowly. Wu Ruofei shouted from the bed. The originally clean and tidy ward was now a mess. Su Yingxu's face darkened, and her voice was cold. If you continue to cause trouble, I'll throw you out right now. Wu Ruofei was shocked. When she saw Su Yingxu enter, her heart trembled violently. She hated Su Yingxue so much that she gritted her teeth and said unwillingly. What right do you have to chase me out? I've paid 20,000 taels of silver. You must cure me, or I'll go to the palace and report you. Oh. You even know what a complaint is. Your mother taught you well. Su Yingxue chuckled and observed Wu Ruofei. She blurted out, my mother didn't teach me that. Su Yingxu's eyes were sharp. Then who taught you? It's, Wu Ruofei immediately reacted and looked away. She said proudly, it's none of your business. One still have my father and brother at home. My father is still a minister, anyway. If you can't cure me, don't think of chasing me away so easily. Su Yingxue snorted softly. I don't have any patients that I can't cure, but the premise is that if you continue to play tricks, one have plenty of ways to deal with you. How are you going to deal with me? Wu Ruofei trembled in fear. Chapter 184. Testing her. To be honest, she had been afraid of Su Yingxue for a long time. In the past, Su Yuro could still suppress her when she bullied her. Now, even her mother was in such a miserable state because of Su Yingxue. Su Yingxue's martial arts and strength were terrifying. As soon as she walked over, she broke out in a cold sweat. Naturally, it's a way to make you afraid. Su Yingxue grabbed Wu Ruofei's arm and changed her dressing. She deliberately did not use any strength to make her continue to cry and howl without worsening her injuries. Su Yingxue took the time for half an hour to change her dressing, but Wu Ruofei cried for whole hours. When Manager Qi was accompanying Su Yingxue on her ward rounds, he could still hear Wu Ruofei's hoarse voice. He could not help but say to Su Yingxue, Miss Wu is crying every day. It will affect the other patients. Moreover, I'm afraid that her injuries won't heal so quickly. What should we do? Her injuries will heal in 7 days. It won't take long. You should comfort the other patients and say that it was Wu Ruofei who caused the trouble. Su Yingxue said as she flipped through the pulse chart of the other patients. Manager Qi was shocked at first. Miss could heal her injuries so quickly. Then, he remembered that Su Yingxue was smart. Wu Ruofei's crying would affect the other patients, but after these patients were comforted by them, they would only think that Wu Ruofei was causing trouble. They could understand Su Yingxue's generosity and the helplessness of the medical center. This move was brilliant. Miss healed Miss Wu so quickly. Could it be that she discovered something? Manager Qi was rather concerned. I was testing Wu Ruofei just now. It wasn't her mother who taught her to stay in the clinic, nor was it her father. As for the person behind her, let's see what they're going to do. Su Yingxue closed the pulse chart with a snap, and a sharp glint flashed across her eyes. If Wu Ruofei wanted her to explode, Su Yingxue would explode with her. Let's see who will give themselves away in the end. After Su Yingxue applied the medicine to Wu Ruofei, she cried her heart out. It was only at night that Feng He came over quietly and comforted her softly. Miss, you've been wronged. Miss Yuro said to bear with it for now. Why don't you let her endure it? I'm about to die from Su Yingxue. It hurts. Wu Ruofei had nowhere to vent her anger, so she could only continue crying. Don't Miss want to avenge Madam and the young masters? Now that Master is busy with official business, you can only rely on yourself. Feng He kept encouraging Wu Ruofei. I want to. I must avenge my mother and brothers. One still want. I want Brother Hao. That Wu Jinyan, she was just a lowly woman, what right did she have? Wu Ruofei's eyes burned with anger as she gritted her teeth. Miss Yuro said that she can't come to see you, but as long as you follow her plan, not only can you avenge Madam and make Su Yingxue sad, but you can also marry young General Su. Wu Ruofei became even more determined after hearing what Feng He said. Even if she had to die, she had to fight Su Yingxue. Wu Ruofei listened to Su Yuro's words and stayed in the clinic shamelessly. She miraculously found that her hands and feet recovered very quickly, but Su Yuro did not give her any more advice, so she could only continue to change her dressing. And every time she changed her dressing, Su Yingxue would make her pain. 7 days later, Su Yingxue let Wu Ruofei get off the bed and walk around. Her hands and feet were healed, and she could walk steadily. Su Yingxue raised her chin at her. How is it, Miss Wu? You can leave the clinic tomorrow. The entire clinic heard Su Hao's roar. Why are you here? Get out. He didn't know why he suddenly felt dizzy. When he woke up, he was entangled with Wu Ruofei on the bed. There were marks of intimacy on Wu Ruofei's neck, and there were tears in the corners of her eyes. But she couldn't hide her joy. Brother Hao, you finally understand my feelings. One knew that I was in your heart. As she spoke, she was about to pounce on Su Hao. Su Hao pushed her away and retreated in fear. He retreated to the side of the table before he slowly regained his senses. Suddenly, there was a loud bang at the door. Su Hao looked up and saw Wu Jinyan standing at the door. The dowry box in her hand had fallen, and the things inside were scattered all over the ground. Her eyes were empty, and her face was pale. Chapter 186, Su Hao was framed. Yenner, it wasn't like that. Yenner, listen to me. It wasn't what you thought. Su Hao was still a little dizzy, and he stumbled in front of Wu Jinyan. He reached out to grab Wu Jinyan's hand, but Wu Jinyan suddenly retreated. Don't touch me. Her thin body trembled, and her nerves tensed up. Wu Ruofei chased after him. She hugged Su Hao and shouted with tears on her face, Brother Hao, after doing this to me, are you going to abandon me? I'm a pure and innocent girl, and I gave myself to you just like that. You can't abandon me, sob, sob, sob. The clinic itself had a lot of people, so the commotion upstairs attracted a lot of attention. Su Hao was a young general who frequented the clinic, so most people recognized him. Wu Ruofei's crying made everyone understand what had happened. At this moment, even though Su Hao's entire body was covered in mouths, he couldn't explain himself. When Su Yingxue arrived, Su Hao had just thrown Wu Ruofei to the ground. He wanted to look for Wu Jinyan, but Wu Jinyan shouted with tears in her eyes, no. Go away. Her eyes were filled with pain and anger, like a flawless white wall that had cracks. She turned around and quickly left Su Hao's sight. Su Hao wanted to chase after her, but Wu Ruofei stuck to him like a piece of plaster. Get lost. Su Hao, who had always been gentle, roared angrily. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he looked at Wu Ruofei. Brother Su Yingxue pulled him back, hinting at him not to chase after Wu Jinyan at this time. As for Wu Ruofei on the ground, she stood up again and cried loudly, Brother Hao, you said that you would marry me. I came to the clinic for treatment just to meet you. Now, the two of us have already. Brother Hao, Ruofei loves you. Shut up. Su Hao shouted angrily with red eyes. If she wasn't a woman, he definitely wouldn't hold back his temper. If you loved my brother, would you let him make a fool of himself in public? Su Yingxue pulled back the agitated Su Hao and questioned Wu Ruofei with raised eyebrows. Wu Ruofei knew that she was not eloquent enough to talk Su Yingxue out of it, so she did not continue. After a while, the commotion downstairs became louder. Su Dingheng and Wu Hongtao rushed over. When Su Dingheng saw that Su Hao and Wu Ruofei's clothes were disheveled, he looked at Su Hao seriously. Haoer, what exactly did you do to Miss Wu? Su Hao's face darkened. I didn't do anything. You. Nonsense. You took advantage of my daughter, and now you're turning your back on me. When Wu Hongtao saw this scene, he was so angry that he wanted to kill someone. He immediately pulled Wu Ruofei behind him and reprimanded her. I told you not to provoke them. Why didn't you listen? Now that something has happened. Father, Wu Ruofei sobbed softly. Although she had succeeded, Wu Hongtao's anger still scared her. Su Yingxue saw the expressions of the father and daughter. However, she found it strange. Why did Su Dingheng and Wu Hongtao come so quickly? Especially Su Dingheng. He reprimanded Su Hao and apologized to Wu Hongtao while beating his chest and stomping his feet. Lord Wu, it was my fault for not being strict in disciplining my son. But don't worry, our Marquis Manor will take responsibility for your daughter. I will let Hao marry her and become the young madam of the Marquis Manor. Humph. Wu Hongtao snorted in disdain. Especially when his eyes met Su Yingshu's, he gritted his teeth in hatred. Chapter 187, Don't have to accept your fate so quickly, I'm not marrying her. Father, nothing happened between us. Su Hao regained his composure and remembered that his momentary trance was due to the illusion he had seen. Bastard! Is this how father usually teaches you? A dignified 7-foot-tall man dared to do it but didn't dare to admit it. What do you think of Lord Wu's daughter? Su Dingheng harshly criticized Su Hao, showing no concern for Su Hao's grievances. I didn't. This matter was very suspicious. Someone must have framed me. Su Hao argued with a red face. For so many years, he had grown up with his grandfather, with little emotional connection to his father. He didn't ask his father to make decisions for him, but he wouldn't easily give in. Would Miss Wu use her innocence to slander you? Su Dingheng didn't side with Su Hao at all. With just a few words, he painted Su Hao as a heartless person. Sob, sob, sob. Father, what should one do in the future? Wu Ruofei cried innocently, leaning against Wu Hongtao. Wu Hongtao lost his temper and declared that he would report Su Hao to the authorities for mistreating his daughter. No. Su Yingxue stepped in to stop him. She glared at Wu Hongtao with a cold face. Lord Wu, do you want me to accompany you to the capital prefecture? This. You. Wu Hongtao felt as if someone had grabbed his throat and immediately shrunk into submission. Su Yingxue. Who are you to speak here? Your brother did something foolish, and as his sister, you didn't even know how to persuade him. 111 Discipline both of you. Come back with me. Su Dingheng stormed off with both of them. After returning to the Marquis Manor, Su Dingheng immediately sought to confirm the marriage between Su Hao and Wu Ruofei. Su Hao adamantly refused, which infuriated Su Dingheng. He couldn't care less about Su Yingxue. He didn't expect Su Hao to completely disregard him. He wanted to use whip on Su Hao, but given Su Hao's current status, he couldn't easily resort to physical punishment. Frustrated, Su Dingheng paced around the hall. Finally, he yelled at Su Yingxue and Su Hao, both of you, go to the ancestral hall and kneel for reflection. Su Hao and Su Yingxue stood up together. As Su Hao turned around, Su Dingheng's reminder echoed like a warning bell in his ears. However, today's events are widely known throughout the city. After all, the Wu family is one of the 6 ministers. You must marry his daughter. Su Hao's back chilled as if he hadn't heard Su Dingheng's words at all. In the ancestral hall, Su Yingxue knelt beside him. When they were alone, she gave him a meaningful look. Brother, extend your hand. Su Hao removed his wristband and extended his hand. After checking his pulse, Su Yingxue frowned. It's rosemary. What is that? Su Hao recalled his physical condition. One went to find Yenner. When one entered the room, I saw her, but for some reason, when one woke up, it was Wu Ruofei. Rosemary is a purified knockout drug. It also contains aphrodisiac components that can paralyze a person's nerves and brain, causing them to lose control. Brother, you have a strong inner energy. The drug's effects weren't very strong on you, but it was enough to cause trouble during the day. Su Yingxue gritted her teeth, realizing that Wu Ruofei had targeted Su Hao. Su Hao clenched his fists tightly, and his downcast eyes looked gloomy. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint Yenner this time. It's my fault. Brother, you were set up by someone. Why accept your fate so quickly? The one who should be punished is the one who set you up. Su Yingshu's eyes were filled with anger. Even if there was nothing I could do this time, I will only marry you. Su Hao placed her hand on his chest, letting her feel how warm his heart was. Wu Jinyan lowered her head and gently planted a kiss on the back of his hand. Su Yingshu sent Jilan to secretly send Wu Jinyan back to the clinic and told her to be careful during this period to prevent others from harming her. After Wu Jinyan left, Su Yingshu wanted to make a trip to the minister's estate. Ziwal followed behind her, and the two of them quietly sneaked into Wu Hongtao's study. Wu Hongtao had just finished scolding Wu Ruofei. When he entered the study and saw Su Yingshu, his heart almost jumped out of his chest. His finger that was pointing at Su Yingshu trembled. You, how did you get in here? If I can get Lord Wu's account book, you don't have to ask me such a stupid question, right? Su Yingshu's attitude was very cold. Chapter 189. The Empress knows very quickly Wu Hongtao was already afraid of her, and now that he had seen her as if he had seen a ghost, he didn't even dare to sit down. You already know what happened to me. What else did you want? You were just trying to threaten me with this, and one wouldn't compromise either. This matter had already spread like wildfire. It couldn't be resolved just by saying that I wouldn't marry my daughter off. Su Yingshu looked at Wu Hongtao coldly. Of course, I knew. One came to ask Lord Wu who gave your family such an idea to make the minister's estate lose face and insist on marrying into our Marquis manor. You. Did you think that my daughter would only marry into your Marquis manor? Wu Hongtao was so angry that he blew his beard and glared. Since Su Yingshu was in the Marquis manor, Wu Hongtao didn't want Wu Ruofei to marry into the Marquis manor. With Wu Ruofei's brain, if Su Yingshu wanted to deal with her, she would be dead in a few days. However, no matter how stupid Wu Ruofei was, she was still his biological daughter. He had doted on her for more than 10 years, and he didn't want her to jump into the fire pit of the Marquis manor. If it wasn't for your brother being unable to control himself, would my daughter have become like this? Wu Hongtao still had a stomach full of anger and nowhere to vent. Lord Wu, don't talk nonsense. Since you didn't come up with the idea, where is your wife? Humph. She was still at her mother's home. If it wasn't for the Empress' decree to announce this marriage at her birthday banquet, one wouldn't have brought that slut back. The blood pressure in Wu Hongtao's chest rose again. Empress. The coldness in Su Yingshu's eyes instantly deepened. The Empress found out too quickly. He even wanted to announce it at her birthday banquet. It seemed that she had to be faster than the Empress. Su Yingshu grabbed Wu Hongtao's collar. Tell me, before Wu Ruofei went to the clinic, who was in contact with her? This. How would one know? You have to ask the servants in the residence. Wu Hongtao was so frightened that his entire body was trembling. He went to check on the people in Wu Ruofei's courtyard. The servant said that Wu Ruofei had only interacted with Su Yuro during this period. Moreover, when Su Yuro was staying in Wu Ruofei's clinic, she often came to the minister's estate to talk to Wu Ruofei's maid, Feng He. Su Yingshu's lips curled up. Manager Qi followed Feng He and couldn't find any clues. So, they met at the minister's estate. This was not surprising. Su Yingshu was about to leave after asking, but she noticed Wu Hongtao's shifty eyes when he stared at her. She returned and smiled at him. I've kept Lord Wu's account book. If you want this account book to appear in front of Lord Liangjin, just tell him what happened today. No. I won't say that you didn't come today, Miss Su. I don't want my daughter to marry into your Marquis manor. Wu Hongtao's face was sullen. In front of Su Yingxue, he was like a little wife who had been angered and did not dare to talk back. Very good. Su Yingxue snorted coldly and returned to the clinic. She returned to the clinic and asked Ziwei to protect Wu Jinyan. Ziwei did not move at first. Su Yingxue asked him, "You're unwilling?" He nodded. Yes. He only wanted to protect Su Yingxue. But Sister Jinyan is my future sister-in-law. I don't want to see anything happen to her, so, take it as an order, okay? Although she said that it was an order, Su Yingxue used a gentle and negotiating tone. Ziwei was silent for a while. His black figure disappeared very quickly. Su Yingxue let out a long sigh of relief and lowered her head to continue tidying up the things in her hands. Recently, she had more and more patients. She tried her best to fill her mind with seeing patients so that she would not think of people she should not think of. Chapter 190. Chu Yihan puked blood. However, as soon as night fell, the cold wind blew in through the window and made her feel cold all over. She would remember that night at the Silver Moon Pavilion. Chu Yihan stood beside Hong Lian and insisted on killing Ziwei. He did not hurt her, but he never appeared in front of her again. Even though her brother had such a big accident, she had been feeling a little tired recently. The light on the candlestick suddenly flashed. Su Yingxue suddenly raised her head and felt a chill beside her. She immediately got up. The candlelight reflected Chu Yihan's celestial appearance. His handsome face looked a little pale under the candlelight. He seemed to have just experienced something, and there was still a murderous aura around him. Su Yingxue subconsciously wanted to be concerned. What's wrong? Chu Yihan held her hand. One heard that something happened to you, so I rushed back to, thank you, Your Highness. The warmth from his palm made her face turn cold. Chu Yihan's hand froze in midair as if he didn't know what to say. He asked, is this how the guard beside you protects you? If it wasn't me who came, but the person who wanted to assassinate you, you would have been in trouble. What's the use of him? There's no need for Your Highness to worry. Ziwei was injured by Your Highness, and I even spent a lot of effort to save his life. Su Yingxue said angrily with a straight face. Chu Yihan sneered. You care about your guard. Naturally. He protected me and risked his life for me. Of course, one care. Your Highness, you have hurt and killed him time and time again. Su Yingxue was so angry that she could not continue. If it was anyone else, she would avenge Ziwei. But this person was Chu Yihan. She couldn't take revenge, nor could she do it. You care about him, but you don't care about me. You don't care if 1 a.m. injured, right? Chu Yihan used the blade to support himself on the floor. His eyes were deep and unfathomable, but his entire body felt cold. Your Highness, martial arts are unrivaled. Who could hurt you? You've always been the only one who hurts others. Even Hong Lian, who you're protecting, is fine. Su Yingxue said angrily. Chu Yihan left as soon as she finished speaking. He turned around coldly, making her eyes redden. Su Yingxue also turned her back angrily. She had only mentioned Hong Lian, and he was already like this. How much he cared about that woman. Puff! Suddenly, she heard a noise behind her. She had wanted to ignore Chu Yihan, but her sensitive nose picked up the scent of blood. Her heart skipped a beat as she hurriedly turned around and rushed out. In the dim hall, Chu Yihan held onto the medicine cabinet with blood at the corner of his mouth. At his feet was a pool of blood that he had just spat out. What happened? How did you get injured? Su Yingxue's face instantly turned pale. She took Chu Yihan to a ward and checked his pulse. She found that he had suffered serious internal injuries and there was a strong smell of blood on his body. Su Yingshu's heart skipped a beat. Who could hurt you? During this period, where did he go? Chu Yihan leaned against the bed curtain and said in a deep voice, Cannibal Valley. Are you crazy? The Cannibal Valley was filled with poison and ferocious beasts. No one who entered could come out alive. What are you doing there? Su Yingshu stomped her feet in anger. However, whenever she thought of the Cannibal Valley, she would think of the records in her mother's diary. There was a type of spiritual medicine called the divine Lingji grass. It was said to be a 1,000-year-old spiritual medicine, and there were only a few traces of it in ancient books. Chapter 191. She's a serious doctor. No one had ever seen it with their own eyes, but the legend of the divine Lingji grass had always made people yearn for it. It was said that the divine Lingji grass could bring people back to life, so for thousands of years, people had been going to the Cannibal Valley to explore it. It was just that no one had ever taken out the divine Lingji grass alive. Chu Yihan went to retrieve the divine Lingji grass. Why? Why are you taking the divine Lingji grass? Su Yingshu's beautiful eyes were filled with confusion. Did he have someone to save? Could it be, is Hong Lian that important to you? Are you risking your life to go to the Cannibal Valley and get the divine Lingji grass just to cure her eyes? Su Yingshu's heart sank, and she felt as if she had fallen into an ice cave. Chu Yihan took a few deep breaths and adjusted his breathing before he had the strength to push her head. What are you thinking about? What does her eyes have to do with me? This stalk of divine Lingji grass is for you. For me. Su Yingshu's exquisite features were filled with doubt. I don't have anyone to save. Why are you going to get it? The divine Lingji grass is extremely precious. It can be used as a trade to settle the grudge between you and the Silver Moon Pavilion. Since you insist on keeping that assassin, I can only help you complete the deal with the Silver Moon Pavilion. Chu Yihan stared at her with a hint of affection in his deep eyes. If she wanted to cause trouble, he would stand behind her and help her clean up. Na bitter taste spread from Su Yingshu's mouth, and her heart felt sour. The trouble she caused had made him pay such a high price. I'm sorry, Your Highness. One should have told you earlier. Su Yingshu's eyes were filled with guilt. The enmity between me and the Silver Moon Pavilion is not entirely because I wanted Ziwei. One had to get involved with them to investigate who insisted on buying my mother's letter. I want to find out who killed my mother and learn about her background. That was why she got involved with the Silver Moon Pavilion. However, she did not expect Chu Yihan to take such a huge risk to settle the grudge between her and the Silver Moon Pavilion. Chu Yihan chuckled. So, I was being a busybody. No. Su Yingshu shook her head. The Silver Moon Pavilion was powerful. If he didn't interfere in this busybody matter, she would have to confront the Silver Moon Pavilion many times, and she might not come out unscathed each time. With Chu Yihan's actions, the Silver Moon Pavilion would have no reason to trouble her. Su Yingshu looked at Chu Yihan gently. Her heart ached for him. She looked at Chu Yihan's pale face and pouted. Do you believe in legends? What if there's no divine Lingji grass? Whether there is or not, you will know once you investigate. This is a matter between me and the Silver Moon Pavilion. I have already settled it, so you don't have to worry about it. Chu Yihan's voice was weak, but every word he spoke was still firm and resolute. Su Yingshu's heart warmed slightly. She went to get some medicine to treat internal injuries. After she boiled it, she asked Chu Yihan to take off his clothes while she applied the medicine to him. Chu Yihan obediently cooperated. Su Yingshu had seen a man's body before since becoming a doctor, but Chu Yihan's exposed upper body made her blush. The lines of his muscles were smooth and distinct. Every muscle seemed to exude a strong force, making one's blood surge. "Don't you want to apply medicine?" Chui Han reminded her when he saw her lowering her head and hesitating. "Oh, right, I'm here." Suing Shue turned around and patted her face to remind herself that she was not only a woman but also a doctor. Chapter 192. A child flirts the god of war. She was only looking at Chu Yihan's body to apply medicine for him. She had no ulterior motives. She applied the medicine to Chu Yihan's body. Most of his injuries were on his back, and there were a few small cuts on his arms as if they were caused by the claws of a beast. Suing Shue poured some medicinal powder and applied it to him. He did not make a single sound, like a numb wooden man. However, Suing Shue couldn't help but feel her heart ache. She asked in a low voice, "These injuries, do they hurt?" Chu Yihan shook his head. "No, they don't hurt." His fingers gently caressed her face. There was still a thin callus on his fingertips. His touch was very gentle, but it stirred ripples in Su Yingshu's heart. After applying the medicine, she noticed that there were many injuries on his chest. Compared to Ziwei, he was probably not inferior. However, the injuries on his body were caused by weapons. Suing Shue thought that these were probably scars he had acquired on the battlefield. She touched the scar on his left chest. Although it had faded, she could still discern how severe the injury had been. She murmured, "This scar must be over 10 years old." Chu Yihan nodded. "Yes, it was from over 10 years ago. It was the first time I went to the battlefield. I was injured by the enemy's general, but I took his life with a spear. That's how this sword wound ended up on my chest." Over 10 years ago, Suing Shue suddenly reminisced. When Chu Yihan had gone to the battlefield, she had still been a child. "When I was little, my grandpa would often hold me and tell stories. One of the stories was about a young prince who fearlessly fought on the battlefield and valiantly defeated his foes. He became famous in just one battle and later became the revered god of war for the entire great Qing dynasty." She tilted her head and looked at the man before her. Chu Yihan touched the back of her head and playfully tapped the tip of her nose. "You've been hearing stories about me since you were little. Did you think I was a mighty warrior?" Su Yingshu nodded. "Even my grandpa praised the god of war. How could he not be powerful? It's just that, as a nobleman's daughter, I only now have the privilege of admiring the great Qing dynasty's god of war." She meant to flatter him, but Chu Yihan's expression darkened. "You don't remember." "Don't remember what?" Su Yingshu tilted her head, puzzled by Chu Yihan's expression. Had she forgotten something important? "You admired me when you were young," Chu Yihan said, his eyes showing displeasure. "When I was young." "How young?" Su Yingshu was filled with question marks. Chu Yihan had never been part of her life. Even in her previous life, she hadn't interacted much with Chu Yihan before her death. She only remembered that in her previous life, when she confessed to Chu Qingye, Chu Yihan had said something to her. What was it? Oh, Su Yingshu remembered now. At that time, Chu Yihan was probably unhappy with her and said, "You're blind." And then, there was nothing else. Chu Yihan seemed to have memories that she didn't know about. Chu Yihan was different from her. Memories were deeply etched in his mind and flowed out readily when he recalled them. "You were 3 years old at the time. The first time I saw you was at my celebratory banquet. You had wet your pants, but your nanny hadn't brought spare clothes. You were crying in the palace, and I happened to pass by when you grabbed the corner of my robe." Su Yingshu was sweating profusely. She had forgotten about this memory. However, judging from Chu Yihan's expression, there was more to the story. Su Yingshu looked up at him and asked, "Your Highness, you were as cold as ice back then. I grabbed the corner of your robe, but you didn't kick me away. Chapter 193. Chui-han was the one who collected her corpse. I had this thought before, Chui-han answered honestly. At that time, he was 15 years old and had returned from a war. His father had conferred upon him the title of Your Highness and granted him a mansion. He was about to inform his mother of this good news. While walking in the palace, he was accosted by Su Yingxue, this little girl, who grabbed onto his clothes. Su Yingxue's nanny knelt on the ground, trembling. Su Yingxue continued to clutch his clothes, crying incessantly. When he inquired, he discovered that Su Yingxue had wet herself. In his younger days, he possessed a cold demeanor and did not incline to deal with such a small child as Su Yingxue. However, her cries were soft and heartrending, tugging at his heartstrings. He glanced down and beheld this little girl, barely as tall as his thigh, with a complexion as fair as snow. She was undeniably adorable, and her cuteness melted his heart. He proceeded to remove his coat and draped it over Su Yingxue. I still remember that after your nanny wrapped you up, only your little pinkish-white face was visible, yet you struggled to approach me, reaching out as if to hug me. Chui-han pinched Su Yingxue's chin and examined her attentively. He could still discern the traces of that tender little face. However, Su Yingxue's face was flushed with embarrassment. She chuckled awkwardly. Thank you, Your Highness, for not kicking me aside. She had seized Chui-han's clothes within the imperial palace and insisted on hugging him. Su Yingxue couldn't believe her audacity. How had she mustered such courage? Chui-han's decision not to send her flying with a kick was an act of great mercy. What happened after that? Su Yingxue was captivated by his narrative. She sat cross-legged in front of Chui-han, inquiring earnestly. After that, suddenly, a cold glint of murderous intent flashed in Chui-han's icy eyes. On the very day, he encountered Su Yingxue before he could rush to the palace to share the news of his new royal title with his mother. She had already passed away. In her palace, only her lifeless body remained. Not a single living servant could be found. He had sought out his father, only to find that his father had suddenly fallen gravely ill. When he shared the news of his mother's passing with his father coughed up a mouthful of blood and passed away a few days later. Refusing to attend his father's funeral, he allowed Chu Mingyuan to ascend the throne. He sat alone in his mother's palace, enduring several heavy snowstorms. Due to his temperament, no one dared to approach and console him. Yet, out of nowhere, a daintily adorned little girl appeared. She was clad in a white fox fur coat and a white scarf, her head crowned with snow, resembling a little white ball in the snowy landscape. She approached him with her short, chubby legs and touched his cold face, her voice babyish as she said, "Don't cry, don't cry. You have me." At that time, her speech was still somewhat incoherent. She had come to him with his clothes, but what she said next had left him astonished. "If you give me clothes, I'll give myself to you. I promise. Give yourself to me." Su Yingxue suddenly stood up and accidentally bumped her head on the bed's edge, causing her eyes to well up with tears. Ouch! I have been stood up by you for so many years, and I've never seen you so excited. Why the rush? Chui-han gently massaged the spot where she had bumped her head. Tears welled up in the corners of Su Yingxue's eyes. She was both shocked and delighted. Shocked by her audacity as a child. At 3 years old, she had dared to tease the current Your Highness Chui-han. She had teased him, yet he hadn't taken responsibility. She was happy that she finally knew who had collected her corpse in her previous life. It was Chui-han. Chui-han had remembered her words from childhood for so many years. So, when I confessed to Chu Qingya, your highness said I was blind because of this? Su Yingxue found it amusing, but she also felt regretful. Chapter 194, My whole body is soft. Chu Yihan's face darkened. Why don't you go and confess to him again? Let's see what I would do. Su Yingxue boldly teetered on the brink of recklessness and asked, What would you do? You need a partner to confess. If you don't have one, who else can you confess to? The corners of Chu Yihan's mouth curled up. Su Yingxue's entire body trembled. Your Highness, you're so scary. I can be even scarier. Chu Yihan grabbed her arm and pulled her into his embrace. Su Yingxue's hair stood on end. Your Highness, you. What do you want? Oh. Chu Yihan pressed her head down and kissed her lips. The man's overbearing intrusion caught her off guard. However, even if she were prepared, Chu Yihan could easily handle it. She placed both her hands on Chu Yihan's chest. Beneath her palms, his muscles and blood vessels bulged, and she could almost feel the power of his heartbeat. Oh, no, Chu Yihan pushed her back, and she felt dizzy. When she saw him turn around to pull the bed curtains, she subconsciously screamed. Chu Yihan turned around and gazed deeply at her before getting off the bed. Su Yingxue sat on the bed in a daze with her arms around her knees. She kept thinking about what she should say to reject Chu Yihan if he came in naked later. Your Highness, it's not polite for us to do this. We can't, whoosh. The bed curtain was lifted, and Chu Yihan was already dressed. He raised his eyebrows and looked at her. It's not polite. What can't we do? We can't. After all, we are still. Su Yingxue wanted to say that she was not married yet, but when she thought of the words she said when she was young, she buried her face in her knees. Chu Yihan picked her up and placed her on his knees. One won't cross the line with you. Before you become the 9th Princess Consort, one won't do anything to you. 9th Princess Consort. Su Yingxue raised her blushing face. One didn't say I wanted to be a princess. You want to abandon me. Chu Yihan's eyes were extremely cold. It was like a knife was placed on Su Yingxue's neck. Su Yingxue quickly hugged her head. No. She didn't dare to say the word abandon to Chu Yihan. Afraid of death. Sob, when old General Su returns, one will naturally propose marriage to him. Chu Yihan pinched her little red ears, his hot breath spraying on her neck. Su Yingxue felt her entire body go limp. Everything in front of her seemed so unreal. However, Chu Yihan stood in front of her. Under the light, his silhouette was perfect, and his facial features were deep and exquisite. It was as if he were the most favored masterpiece of the heavens, breaking the fog in front of her. She reached out to Chu Yihan. Your Highness, hug. Chu Yihan carried her up as easily as he could carry a child. Su Yingxue blew into his ear and teased, I didn't think that your Highness would have such deep feelings for a child. I am very honored. Chu Yihan patted her back gently, his eyes full of longing. If I knew I would fall deeply in love with you, one would have hidden you and not let you have any chance to leave. He hoped he could hide her forever. This way, she would never have the chance to fall in love with anyone else. In both her past and present lives, this was the first time Su Yingxue experienced what it meant to be deeply in love. She caressed her face and lips as if Chu Yihan's warmth was still there. It was also because of his strength that she was not afraid of what would happen in the future. Chapter 195, Entering the Palace. Miss, Master sent someone to inform you to quickly prepare and enter the palace. Today is the Empress' birthday banquet, and all the officials' wives are invited. Jilan hurriedly approached, her face filled with concern. She was very worried. Master didn't inform you in advance, and now he's telling you suddenly. Miss, could it be dangerous inside the palace? Should we inform eldest young master to protect you? Su Yingxue raised a corner of her lips. Brother will be attending too, but there's no need to trouble him. This time, she was entering the palace to help Su Hao resolve a problem. Miss, even if you don't need eldest young master, time is running out. Let me quickly help you with your makeup. Jilan promptly offered to assist Su Yingxue, heading to her wardrobe to search for suitable attire. Su Yingxue wasn't particularly concerned about dressing up, but she instructed Jilan, find a pink dress. Jilan swiftly complied, saying, yes, Mississippi. Su Yingxue had spent the entire night working on something and had soaked it in the Medicine King Valley's spirit spring. She needed to retrieve it now to take it into the palace. Jilan helped Su Yingxue change into a peach blossom pink dress and styled her hair in a simple bun. However, Su Yingxue disliked golden hairpins. From the assortment of hairpins that noble consort Xiao had gifted her, she randomly selected one adorned with carved peach blossoms. This particular hairpin had delicate tassels that hung down, adding a touch of charm to her rosy face. Chui Han had remarked that when he first saw her, she was like a cute little doll. On the day she would meet him again, she decided to embrace a cuter appearance. As she left, Su Yingxue held a sachet she had retrieved from the spirit spring. She gave one to Jilan and instructed her to ensure Su Hao wore it. She also tied one onto herself and carried one in her hand as she made her way to the front hall. Su Dingheng and Su Yuro had been waiting in the front hall. When Su Yingxue appeared in her long dress, both were momentarily stunned. Su Dingheng rubbed his eyes, momentarily mistaking her for his late wife. Upon closer inspection, he realized it was indeed Su Yingxue. Having shed her usual tight-fitting attire for the dress, she appeared as beautiful as a dream, identical to how Xu Li had looked in his memories. Su Dingheng couldn't help but feel a pang of emotion. Su Yuris' eyes blazed with jealousy. Su Yingxue was already striking without any effort, and with this attire, she looked even more stunning. Today, she had spent 2 hours getting ready, but she still couldn't match Su Yingxue's effortless charm. It made her grit her teeth in frustration. Why did Su Yingxue have to be so beautiful, provoking jealousy in others? Younger sister. Su Hao strolled over, and upon seeing Su Yingxue in her peach blossom dress, he was taken aback. Her delicate oval face, porcelain-like complexion, and captivating eyes, which blinked at him playfully, melted his heart. In his memory, his mother had been similarly breathtaking and a bit mischievous. Brother, you're here. Do you have a sachet one made that suits your taste? Su Yingxue asked, smiling sweetly at him. Su Hao held the sachet and smiled gently, since my sister made it, it's undoubtedly the best. But why do you have another one in your hand? Su Hao noticed she already had one tied to herself and was holding a white one in her hand. Su Yingxue approached Su Yuro and said with a tender smile, this one is, of course, for my younger sister. The 3 of us, siblings, each get one. How could we leave my younger sister without one? Thank you, sister, for your kind thoughts. Today, I'll be wearing the jade pendant bestowed by the Empress, so it wouldn't be suitable for me to wear a sachet, Su Yuro replied gently, though her heart sneered at the idea of wearing such trinkets. Chapter 196, Wearing the Sachet Ruer. This is your sister's intention. How can you refuse it like this? Su Dingheng spoke up. Su Yuro was taken aback. Her father rarely sided with Su Yingxue. He had always favored her. Su Yingxue's lips curved into a cold, mocking smile. Su Dingheng had been fixedly studying her face. It seemed he was recalling her mother. Su Yingxue decided to follow his gaze and continue her act. She feigned a somewhat aggrieved expression. Younger sister received a reward from the Empress, so she no longer values what her sister has made. But I thought that since the three of us rarely attend banquets together and it was the Empress' birthday, one made a few sachets hoping that it would show our family in a harmonious light to outsiders. However, since younger sister doesn't appreciate it, well, then let's forget about it. Su Yingxue said with a saddened look. She looked exactly like her mother. Su Dingheng's heart sank. Su Hao's gaze towards Su Yuro turned colder. Since you don't care about your family, it's fine if my sister and I skip the banquet today. You can go alone. Su Hao had never been warm towards Su Yuro. Now that he had spoken, Su Yuro was in a panic. What are you saying, brother? It's just a sachet. How can you be so angry over it? Plus, there's an important matter related to you at today's banquet. How can you not attend? Su Yuro appeared weak on the surface but felt quite repulsed inside. In the past, Su Hao had not been eloquent, rarely speaking. However, after spending time with Su Yingxue, his words now carried a sharp edge, leaving her no room for retreat. Considering Su Hao's status, Su Dingheng reminded Su Yuro, "Ruer, it's just a sachet. You should wear it. The sachet looks exquisite. I believe it will add to your charm." Su Dingheng had said so, and Su Yuro had no reason to refuse. She clenched her teeth, put away the sachet, and tied it around her waist. Then, she thanked Su Yingxue with a forced smile. "Thank you, sister, for your kind gesture." Su Yingxue smiled knowingly when she saw her wear it. "Sister, no need to be so formal. After all, we're family." Family? Su Yuro's eyes were filled with doubt. Suddenly, she wasn't in a hurry to enter the palace. She wanted to pry open Su Yingxue's mind and see if something was amiss with her. How could those words possibly come from her? The two of them were incompatible like oil and water. With doubt in her mind, Su Yuro boarded the carriage. The Marquis Manor was not a small household, so it was impossible for the three young masters and young misses to squeeze into a single carriage to enter the palace. Su Yingxue and Su Hao took one carriage in the front, while Su Yuro rode alone in the carriage behind them. As Su Yuro watched Su Yingxue and Su Hao board their carriage, her mind was filled with question marks. Today, something had to be wrong with Su Yingxue. Yuan Ruo noticed her frown and asked, "What is Miss still worried about?" "Your plan went unnoticed by the eldest young master and the eldest young miss. The eldest young master is usually quite aloof. Today, he had no choice but to enter the palace obediently. Once the Empress announces his marriage to Miss Wu, the two siblings won't be able to change it, no matter how reluctant they are." Yuan Ruo said a lot to lift Su Yuro's spirits. However, Su Yuro's brows remained tightly furrowed. She couldn't help but wonder what schemes Su Yingxue and Su Hao were playing. Su Hao being summoned to the palace was no ordinary matter. Even if he were foolish, he could probably guess that Wu Ruofei would also attend the Empress' birthday banquet today. Follow current novels on Top Novel Fole. CM